Hello, in this video, we are going to go over Unit 4, Lesson 2, Acculturation. So acculturation is when people had to change their lifestyle due to their exposure to a new culture. An example of this is how migrant eating habit changed when they moved to a new country. A healthy migrant effect is that migrants tend to be healthier than the people in their native country and the people from the country that they moved to. This is because healthier people tend to migrate more than unhealthy people, and the migrant original culture food tends to be healthier than the Western first world country food. So that's why they tend to be healthier when they first move to the new country because of their healthy eating habit. However, negative acculturation effects start to occur, which is the diminishing difference between the migrant and the native born. This is because over time, the migrants begin to adopt the eating habit from the new country that they moved to. So then over time, they become obese and became more like the people in the new country. As for acculturative stress, this is the stress experienced by people when their original cultural value come in conflicts with the new culture. So over time, this can lead to obesity and can negatively impact mental health. So according to Barry, there are 4 strategies for cultural change. The first one is assimilation. This is when people are open to changes and they are not concerned about if they lose their original culture or not. So usually this is solved by dominant group. So dominating country tends to want to learn culture of other group like Asian culture and other culture. And openness to changes led to multiculturalism, which is the openness to all parts of the world and to increase diversity. The second one is integration. This is when someone value both their original culture and the new culture. So this is pursued by a non-dominant group when the dominant society is open. So an example of this is a person in Asia. They value both their own culture, but they also open to learn about the Western culture. And as for separation, this is when they want to preserve their original culture, so they do their best to avoid contact with other culture because they are afraid that this might affect their views and it might violate and serve as a threat to their own culture. And the fourth one is marginalization. This is when people have little interest in both maintaining their original culture or adopting new culture. Like they do not like their own culture, nor they do try to find a new culture that they would like. So a study that talks about acculturation is Shaw in 2015. So the aim of this is to investigate the correlation between acculturation and obesity. So the sample include 1,375 South Asian migrant workers in UAE. There's also men of the same age group in their country of origin, so they can do the comparison. As for the methodology, the participants were given a health questionnaires that ask about their eating habits and their lifestyle. Their BMI and blood pressure is also being measured. And they found that migrants in the UAE tends to have a higher rate of obesity than the people in their original country, and even have a higher rate of obesity than an average man in the country that they moved to. And there's just a positive correlation between the time they stayed and the higher BMI. So as the more time they stayed in the new country, their BMI increases. So an evaluation for this is that it has a low sample to population generalization because all South Asian men are in the study. So since South Asian men is a narrow group of people, you can't generalize this result to the rest of the population. And it has high ecological validity because this is not a true experiment. So everything that they said in the questionnaire must likely be true. And because it's not in a experiment, you can't infer causation as there are confounding factors that affect it. And this research study utilized data triangulation because multiple methods are being used, such as testing their physical, so like the blood pressure, but there are also surveys where they talk about the questionnaire. So there are different methods of collecting data being used. So they use data triangulation. So in here, this study support acculturation because since these men are exposed to unhealthy Western eating style, when they move to the new country, their eating habits have changed from how they used to eat healthy food back in their old country, but now they start adopting to eat unhealthy fast food. So over time, their obesity increase. This is the negative acculturation effect as how their health begins to deteriorate over time the longer they stay in the new country. The longer they stay, the more fast food they eat. So over time, their obesity rate increase, which led to the diminishing effect, a difference between them and the people in the native country and the people that are in the new country that they moved to. Also, these men might also feel stressed out trying to adapt to the new culture because in the new country, some of the norms might violate their original norms. So they might have acculturated stress and they might eat to cope with their stress. And this is why the stress led to them having a higher obesity rate. So some evaluation of acculturation is that since acculturation needs a lot of culture, so it needs to conduct studies in many parts of the world. So this can be really time consuming. And it also utilizes questionnaires and surveys. So a lot of self-report data might be used. So we don't really know if whatever they put in the questionnaire is really accurate or not. And people in here might demonstrate social desirability bias, which is basically when you say good stuff about yourself to please the researcher. As I say before, this has problematic generalization because it only look at the movement from people from the poor to rich country, but not vice versa. So we can't really generalize it to other people or other country. And the negative acculturation effects, it goes against like the well-established correlation between the high socioeconomic status and the poor health. So there is a high correlation between low social status and poor health because people tend to assume that those that in the low economic class wouldn't have like access to healthy food. So they have poor health. However, usually people in high socioeconomic, they have a lot of fast food, so it also correlates with poor health. However, this is not the case because low socioeconomic class could also, they have a healthy traditional food, and that goes against the well-established correlation between low socioeconomic and poor health. So that's it for this video. See you next lesson.